Okie doke, we'll go ahead and get started. We will have a moment where folks can introduce themselves to the group. Tell us a little bit why you're here. Let us know if there's anything that you brought for the group to think about or discuss. But in the interim, I'll do a little bit of introductory remarks. And if folks would like to introduce themselves in the chat, that is perfectly acceptable too. Or if you'd like to do that instead anyway, please feel free. And Loretta, I may have a little bit of choppiness, so just let me know if I kind of go in and out, because I'm not quite confident in the internet here. Okay. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the April 2022 listening sessions for the California Truth and Healing Council. We have general listening sessions this week, with the first taking place today, right now, until 2:30. And then we're doing one tomorrow instead of Wednesday. So it is a little bit of an adjustment just for this week. And we'll be doing that at 6 to 7:30 p.m. tomorrow. The council will hold a regular the council does not have a regular business meeting scheduled yet for this month. And we'll talk about that a little bit when we go through the overviews and updates. My name is Christina Snyder, and I'm a member of the Dry Creek Rancheria Band of Pomo Indians and the tribal advisor for Governor Gavin Newsom. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that the land I'm joining you from is the homelands of the Nishanan and Miwok peoples. I am now going to briefly walk through some of the logistics for today's session. First, we're recording this listening session, and it's available for the public participation via Zoom and dial-in. The recording and summary notes will be available on the CTHC meeting page and the blog when they're ready. For those interested in following the council, ongoing updates, including listening session recordings and listening session summary documents, are available at the California Truth and Healing Council updates blog at catruthandhealing.com. You can also get updates for events by following the Governor's Office of the Tribal Advisor on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Additional details, including meeting dates, agendas, and background information, are available at tribalaffairs.ca.gov/CTHC. If you've not already done so, we'd appreciate if you could update your name to let us know who you are in the chat. And as we get into the discussion portion of today's session, we'd appreciate for those who are comfortable speaking to please go on camera just so that we can have more of a face-to-face facilitated discussion. We're going to start with brief introductions of those of you who have joined us. And then as always, we'll dive into a quick overview to get everyone up to speed on recent updates. And then we'll go into the discussion portion of today's convening. If you'd like to speak at any point, you can raise your hand and I'll call on you. And if you're using the Zoom app, you can raise your hand using the app controls or Alt-Y in Windows or Option Y on Mac. If you've dialed in, you should be able to raise or lower your hand by pressing *9. You can also email written comments to info@catruthandhealing.com at your convenience. Now, before we begin, I'd like to remind participants that all of our council members, council staff, and many of you are members of the population seeking collective healing. So I ask that you engage with the council, our office, and each other with respect and with your whole heart in a healing mindset. Many of us doing this work are navigating systems that were not built for us to make change that was never contemplated. This in itself takes an enormous amount of patience and emotional integrity, and we're all doing our best to make strides in these spaces. So thank you again for joining us. And this time, I'll turn it over very quickly to Loretta, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Loretta Miranda. I'm Serrano and Cupeño from the Morongo Band of Mission Indians and currently serve as Chief Deputy Tribal Advisor, joining you today from the ancestral homelands of the Cahuilla people, and looking forward to the discussion today.
And I didn't see any council members on, but if they are on, please let me know. And then very quickly, we also have from my staff, Michael Park is on. If you have any comments, questions, or if you'd like to set up a meeting outside of the listening session, please let us know. We have a raised hand from Buffy Schmidt.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Buffy Schmidt. I'm Vice Chairperson of Sherwood Valley Band of Pomo Indians. I'm in Northern California, and I'm also the Northern Pomo language instructor at the Ukiah High School here in Mendocino County, and I'm looking forward to listening in on this discussion today. I've sat in on a few listening sessions, and the topics were varied. So very interested in today. Thank you.
Great, thank you and welcome, Vice Chair. Would anyone else like to introduce themselves to the group at this time before we turn over to chat?
We do have some folks introducing themselves in the chat, so please feel free to continue doing so. Or go on and unmute yourself and introduce yourself to the group.
Hi, this is Teddy Simon. I just pronounce she, her, member of the Navajo Nation and the Indigenous Justice Advocate at ACLU of Northern California. I'm excited to be here just to keep thinking alongside you all about ways that the ACLU as a nonprofit advocacy organization can support the work of the council.
Awesome, welcome back. And I think what'll be interesting for folks today is we're going to start talking about issue area task forces. So I'm very excited to kind of hear what folks think about that once we get there. Anyone else? And remember, you can also introduce yourself in the chat. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and begin with our updates. And if folks have comments, questions, thoughts as we go along, please feel free to raise your hand or put something in the chat and we will go from there. And if there is anything you have a question about that's outside of the context of the presentation, but is relevant to the work that this group is doing or that is related to reparations or restitution-oriented activities that this group could be thinking more about, please let us know. And then we will, we're happy to have that discussion. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen at this time. And are you seeing the right screen, Loretta?
Not, well, I'm seeing the PowerPoint, but not the actual slideshow view of it yet.
Yeah.
Right, we're good.
Okay. So to begin this discussion, we'll start with the council meeting principles, which the council adopted in order to create a space where participants feel welcome, respected, and able to speak comfortably. We ask that all participants, which includes council members, authorized representatives, staff, moderators, and the public, work towards sharing in their stewardship. If you're a part or if you're a participant in a convening with the council, we ask that you engage in the work of the council and with others in an open and respectful way. Engage in behaviors that will make others feel welcome. Take care of your emotional, mental, spiritual, and physical well-being, and seek support as you need it. What does respectful engagement mean? That means affirm the person, but critique the ideas. The ideas are separate from the person. And I think in this space, it's going to be difficult because some of these ideas are core to folks' identity and their experience as Native people. So I think even when critiquing the ideas, just be careful about the language that you're using. But we do want to have a space where people can engage in healthy discussion and kind of have a back and forth on ideas. Provide feedback constructively and with the intent for mutual growth and healing. Welcome feedback and challenges to your opinions. And then also, I think in that space, understand where something is an opinion and where something is less of an opinion and more of a firm belief. And that will kind of help you think about how you will address those kinds of conversations. Avoid contributing to assumptions or generalizations about tribes, tribal communities, or other groups. Do not ask individuals to speak for their perceived group, speak only for yourself. And offer participants the benefit of the doubt. Spirited discussions are expected on these topics. See this as a sign that folks are engaged and care, and remember to be respectful as you speak, read, and listen. I do want to mention something because I don't know if it's come up in the context of this council, but just in case there are folks who are not from the community who are listening in general, we will give deference to elders and to tribal leaders and to California Native people in this space. And so when there are elders speaking, even if you feel that they've taken enough time, please let them speak until they're done speaking and sharing their thoughts. Same thing with elected officials and anybody who has had the courage to speak up in this space. We want to make sure that they're getting the space that they need to say what they need to say without being cut off or without judgment. Respectful engagement. This also means honor confidentiality. Do not share others' experiences or information without permission. And really in the context of this work, this means if someone comes here and shares something about their people, their family, their personal experience, that is not your experience to share, either personally or by proxy. And so to the extent that they have given you permission to share it, that's fine. But just remember that that's not implicit in someone sharing within the context of this space. And there's a history here of extractive practices when it comes to things that Native people share. And so we just want to make sure we're not creating a space where that is happening. And to the extent that you hear something that you find interesting or that you may want to follow up on, please work with that person personally to make sure that they are fully aware of and informed of and consent to the use of that information. Assume that you have relative privileges and I'll back up. And if it's information that is not their personal story, but is a story of someone else within their tribe, I think you need to go that extra mile too, so that you're not inadvertently sharing someone else's story that they weren't aware was being shared in the context of this space. So then assume that you have relative privileges and both explicit and implicit biases. Know that others may or may not have similar opportunities, experiences, and background as you, and recognize that their contributions are equally valuable. For those from dominant identity groups, refrain from contributions that prioritize dominant experiences over those who have been marginalized. And then make behavioral adjustments for virtual communication. If you wouldn't say something to someone's face, refrain from saying it virtually by voice or text. Know that use of strong language, capital letters, and exclamation marks can easily be misinterpreted online as unwelcome yelling or aggressive behavior. And remember that tone does not carry via text. People might not realize that you're joking or being sarcastic. Leave space for others to engage and express comments and ideas if you've spoken recently by letting people finish their thoughts before adding new ones. Personal well-being. Take steps to ensure your physical comfort. Some examples in virtual meetings include shifting your seating and standing position often, taking a purposeful deep breath regularly, raise your eyes to look beyond the screen or sit back from the computer when possible, keep a glass of water nearby and take sips throughout the session. Please consider physically leaving the computer during breaks. Participate as you're able to and adjust your presence as needed, whether that's turning off video or stepping away entirely. It's not expected that all participants will or should be present for the entirety of the council's work. We know and support that you'll take time to eat, take care of your families and pets, but be aware that virtual convenings will be recorded and available to the public. Personal well-being. Set up supportive resources such as food, water, ergonomics, and privacy while offloading responsibilities if possible in advance of convenings. Plan for breaks and stick to them. Seek support from your own networks or from provided resources as needed. And alert council staff to any concerns as soon as possible. We recognize that participants bring their entire selves and histories with them to the council, and that topics explored during the course of this work may stimulate emotions and thoughts that would benefit from accompaniment and support. Although trauma responses can come from a variety of sources and contexts, the council understands that those who have experienced disparate treatment due to their Native identities may specifically want to seek assistance related to historical trauma and related issues discussed with council. Council staff will be providing supportive resources for participants to be available for the duration of the council's work. Okay, so today we are going to talk through the council and its charge, hybrid quarterly council meetings, the subcommittees, issue area task forces, and then open up for listening and discussion. So what is the California Truth and Healing Council? It's a California Native American-led initiative that aims to clarify the historical record of the relationship between the state and California Native Americans by bearing witness to, recording, examining existing documentation of, and receiving California Native narratives in the spirit of truth and healing. The council is led and convened by my office and governed by a governing council of California Native American leaders, and can also include additional non-voting representatives from California Native American tribes, state and local agencies, and other relevant non-governmental stakeholders. The council will submit a final written report of findings to the governor's office by 2025. The final report should reflect a holistic understanding of the historical relationship between California Native Americans and the state. The final report may also make remedial recommendations and consider how to prevent similar depredations or policies in the future. The recommendations will be considered and adopted or developed by the council in real time. These can be recommendations to improve policy, legislation, or funding for California Native people. And this is why the task forces will be so important, is that it's conceived of that those task forces will be focused on those specific issue areas with some subgroups. And so the task forces can take a deeper dive into the different pieces that should be examined, and will be basically creating those recommendations that will be vetted then by the deliverables subcommittee. The council welcomes and encourages all available methods for public participation. Participants are encouraged to attend and observe all meetings of the council, with the exception of any closed session proceedings, submit written statements to the council, make oral statements and testimony to the council, participate in interactive dialogues, panel discussions, and informal meetings, organize and host affiliate events on issues relevant to the work of the council, and join the work of the subcommittees or the task forces. If you're a California Native American tribe, we are beginning initial consultation meetings and have had several already. You can reach out to info.tribalaffairs@gov.ca.gov or the info@catruthandhealing.com if your tribe is ready to meet. And again, these are very flexible. We're not really dictating what happens in those consultations, but are really using them as an opportunity for each tribe to ask questions about the council, to let us know whether there are things that we should be thinking about in the context of this work, and whether there's already lessons learned, practices, portfolios of their own narrative that they would like to potentially think about submitting to the council, or that they would like the council to cross-reference. In the same vein, there are, we know, oral histories that have already been done, and if there are tribes that are comfortable with those oral histories being a part of this process, those are the times that we are discussing, or that's what we would discuss in the context of these consultations. If there are tribes that are ready to go and want to have a submission via this consultation, we're happy to facilitate that as well. And we're flexible about the method and mode as meetings. I say meetings will be recorded and transcribed. That's not necessary for some of the meetings. Some of them we're just having a touch base, and we're saying, you know, what do you need? What are you thinking about in this space? And going from there. And tribes can share as much or as little as they're comfortable with. Outside of tribal consultation, the Governing Council and the Tribal Advisor's Office are available to meet with Native American individuals, organizations, and groups at their request as well. And I think, as always, if there are other, if there are counties, if there's local communities that are engaged in this work as well, we would love to hear more about it so that we can also highlight your efforts, and to the extent that we have the ability to support your efforts or to refer funders or other partners your way for local engagement, we're happy to do that as well. The council is currently seeking to conduct interviews for Native oral histories, particularly from elders, and can provide you with assistance in providing submissions. You can contact us at info@catruthandhealing.com, expressing your interest in submitting an oral history, and we can set up a time to talk further and see what your needs might be in that space. What we're doing right now is we're in the process of creating kits, basically, that we can lend out to different tribal organizations, tribal governments, and tribal communities to be able to do some of this on their own if they prefer. But we're also happy to come out and conduct those oral histories as well. And that will probably be ready in the next couple of months. So for this year, the council is conducting its regular regional meetings and hearings, and that started in March. The first hybrid regional meeting of the council took place on March 17th and 18th in Sacramento. And the governing council will also meet as needed to conduct business. These meetings will be done in accordance with open meeting rules because we had waivers due to COVID-19 that expired at the end of March. And they're now valid again. And so we have to be conducting those meetings in accordance to those rules. But they may also just be a part of the quarterly meetings or regional hearings where we'll add on another 3 hours for the council to be able to conduct work as needed. So I wanted to go over very quickly the agenda that we had for the March hybrid meeting, because this will be pretty similar to what we're looking at in different quarterly meeting spaces. And the first day we had from 4 to 6 p.m. a site visit and listening session for interpretive changes at Sutter's Fort State Park, where participants were able to hear more about how that state park is re-envisioning how it tells the story of Sutter and what really that site is and its purpose. And that was a side event that we incorporated as an affiliate event for this specific meeting. The next day on March 17th, we had an in-person and streamed talking and listening circle at the future site of the California Indian Heritage Center in West Sacramento. And that was streamed and is available on our YouTube if anyone would like to see that conversation. And really we break it up into the morning being some of the local updates of the area, some of the thoughts about where we're at in time, some of the recent changes. And then after a short break, we go into a more facilitated discussion about the history of that specific place and what it means, to be sitting here today, what it means that these policies aren't where they should be, what it means to be a Native person living in the context of modern California. The discussions are difficult. They are eye-opening for a lot of people, I think, who are not necessarily from the community, and are leading people to think about what could be done to address some of these issues. We then will have some sort of lunch, and then the afternoon, the council went to go see some of the collections under the Parks Department, and then we made available some primary sources for the public, and that was with the state libraries. So they brought out original indenture documents. They brought out some of the original laws that the state passed, and were there as a resource in case anybody wanted to do a bit more digging and a bit more research on their people as well. And then Friday, we had the Truth and Healing Council hearing at the Natural Resources Agency, which was streamed with online question and answer for web participants. So we're trying to maintain a hybrid meeting setup in the event that people can't make it to these meetings, with the overarching caveat that it is a different kind of energy in person, and there's different kind of discussions happening in person. And so we're doing everything we can to make. Do we have a question? Or did someone just go off mute? Okay. We're doing everything possible to make these meetings as COVID friendly as possible, because we don't want to be putting the population at risk. But they are, we're trying to maintain a hybrid status just so that we can have that broad-based engagement in the event that folks can't make it to meetings. We will be announcing an opportunity for people to be able to attend meetings, some financial support in case people do want to attend these meetings in person. And we will prioritize, because of COVID conditions, the local tribes and Native peoples of the region. So for each meeting, we ask tribes a number of questions. We asked, do you have any suggested or proposed speakers to present the story of your tribe or region to the council? Speakers can be elders, tribal historians, trusted academics, and they can receive a stipend for speaking as well. And you can send us their contact information in advance.
Shush.
We'll ask if your tribe is interested in providing an opening blessing or thoughts for either day of the meeting. We'll ask if your tribe or representative would like to have the opportunity to tell the story of your tribe at a location on a walking tour or other type of thing. We'll ask how many individuals will attend from the tribe, because we want to prioritize their participation. And is there anything about your tribe that you'd like highlighted for the general public? So some of the things that we'd like to be able to do is highlight links to tribal cultural centers, businesses, or web presences, and are happy to include any of that information as part of the event itself. So for example, if you've got a tasting room that you want to highlight and have people come and visit as part of, a modern footprint, we'd love to be able to link to that as well. And then, would your tribe or any of your tribal members like to host any affiliate events? So that's, like I mentioned, there was the Sutter's Fort event, but there can also include nature walks, dinners, cultural center open houses, and the like. And would your tribe like to provide any digital content? So if you have any videos, scans, or recordings that you'd like to present to the council in the context of the meeting, we're happy to provide those as well. And maybe it's an oral history that you think represents the story of your tribe. In addition to quarterly meetings, the council will hold regional hearings throughout the state. And this is for if you have a specific incident that happened in your region, or you have a specific person from your region that you'd really like to highlight, or you just like to highlight the story of your region, but without kind of the full build out of a quarterly meeting. The council can come and hold a regional hearing in your area, and then potentially tack on a business meeting as well, to the extent that they need to do additional business. So if you'd like to host a regional hearing, or you have a topic you'd like to cover in a regional or topical hearing, you can contact us and we'd like to set that up. And so if you are from a region where you're not quite sure what you'd like to do, but you'd like to have the council come, we can work with you from start to finish. If you are in a space where you're kind of used to hosting these types of things and bringing in outsiders to learn more about your tribe, and you have a kind of shovel ready type of presentation, we're happy to just plug into that as well. So I'm going to pause very quickly and see if there are any comments before we go into the council subcommittee updates. Where's my... Let's see. Vice Chair.
Yes. Thank you, Christina. Very good so far, and I appreciate everything the Truth in Healing Council has presented to us. And what sticks out in my head right off the top is the things that you're initiating, the things that you're implementing or trying to implement with other tribes. Is that going to have the ear of Governor Newsom? And is that the end goal to, I know it's to bring awareness of the natives in these areas and our trauma and intergenerational trauma and the things that we're still going through. But we know our stories, and we know what's going on in our communities, and talking about that is healing. But I again just was wondering, is that the end result, is to bring awareness to our state representatives and our federal representatives to hopefully teach them empathy and sympathy of our plight and what we're still going through in 2022.
I think that's one piece of it, definitely, is to educate policymakers and people who are responsible for administering programs to make them understand that California Native people are still here and understand the context of survival, so that they understand, when the federal government allocates $0 to California, they understand what exactly it means that they're doing that and what they're kind of reinforcing when they do that. So a better understanding of the people, the history, the diversity here. But then the second piece is because the governor's office is a part of this initiative, it has that second weight of it, that we are looking at this report to provide direct policy recommendations that can be implemented to try to steer this ship in a different direction. And so, for example, one example is the 100 million for the conservation and for land back and for even just land capacity. But it's kind of open and up in the air at this point. But where we hear recommendations, where we hear that there is like longstanding issues through the context of this work, getting the community informed recommendations that are vetted and approved by everybody from the California Native community. Those will be kind of the blueprint for how we start changing laws, how we start making things that are a bit more responsive to California Native people, understanding that full history, that full diversity, the full story of California.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that response. I appreciate that.
Additional comments at this time or questions?
Yeah, hi, this is Fred Briones. I had a question about your organization now. It really seems like it's trying to capture the history by the truth. And my recommendation is just to have the state recognize the truth, which a few examples would be like the gold rush, the state seal, and also the paying of murder of indigenous peoples, $5 per Indian head, things like that. Make them admit to those things instead of putting the pressure on these outside groups to do this. So in policy, please change those ways. That gives more recognition to our Indian people. And your group is very new. It shows where I'm from Clear Lake, Big Valley Rancheria. We've been there for over 10,000 years. So we recognize change. We see change. And one of the changes that I'd like to bring up is that I noticed you've hired this outside decolonizing wealth project. That is right there already to hire an outside group, not from California. That is a mistake. And we cannot let those mistakes happen again. We need to bring in more California people. And I hope that they're not being exploited for philanthropy. Just say, look, this is what we're doing for indigenous peoples. But let's focus on California peoples. So please relay those messages to the governor. And we're going to be around. There's other organizations like the California Tribal Fund, for example, that we have already granted out $1 million to California tribes. We are very well connected community leaders in California, in philanthropy, already raising money. So it's very shameful to see an outsider come in and try to run our territory. So that was a very big mistake on your part. So let's not let that happen again. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any additional comments or questions at this time? Anna?
Yeah, I have a question about archives. Maybe it's just a coincidence that I'm going through 40 years of activist paperwork, but are you interested in paper archives of issues, California Indian issues, statements by elders, things on paper? And also videotapes or any kind of tapes. Are you interested in reviewing any of that material? Thank you.
Absolutely. And I think that the parameters are basically, if a tribe wants that to be part of their submission, then that's what we'll consider part of their submission. And really, the reason that we are shifting how we get this kind of story is because Native people haven't been asked what their story is ever, I think, from the perspective of state people. So what we're trying to do in this space is reorient it, have that be as dictated by Native people. What is your story? How do you tell your story? Who is important to you? And have that be the dominant narrative rather than what either the state has decided is reality or what anthropologists have decided is reality. Or if a tribe says this anthropologist actually did a really good job, we want this to be our submission, that's also something we would take. I will also say too, that one of the things we've been asked is, what are the kinds of things you're looking for? And I think, again, one tribe may say, we want to highlight this really awful thing that happened in history to our tribe, and that's our submission. Another tribe may say, we want to highlight these 3 people who survived, and we want to tell their story so that they're known forever and that they're held up in those places like, the California Hall of Fame. So I think we're open to whatever tribes want to submit as their stories.
So I guess the best thing would be whatever we're looking at, we run it by a tribal representative, an elder or tribal council or whatever, and not, let them submit it.
Yeah, and we would want it to be their submission. Exactly.
Yeah, thank you, Christina. Nice to see you.
Good to see you too. Anna Christensen?
Yeah.
Great, okay, I thought so. Other comments, questions at this time?
Another piece on, collecting archives and historical records. If your tribe or organization needs assistance with that, digitization, please let us know. That is something that the council will look into. But yes, definitely, we recognize that a lot of this historical information is on documents that need to be scanned in. And so just wanted to put that out there.
Okay.
Hello, thank you for having me. And as always, I appreciate all of your great work, Christina, you and your team. I wanted to bring to your team and the council's attention my cousin, the late Dugan Aguilar, who was a longtime photographer among many California Native tribes. He was the longtime photographer for CIBA, the California Indian Basket Weavers Association. And he dedicated several decades of time to interact and photograph different California Native people at events. My mother, Sandra, introduced him to our Yurok side and all throughout the North Coast. And he also took landscape photographs on tribal lands. He was given a very unique look at many cultural places, and he gifted his photography, his images, in many ways. And Heyday Books published a book showcasing some of his imagery. It's called She Sang Me a Good Luck Song. But I wanted to bring this to your attention that when my cousin Dugan passed, all of his archive went to the Oakland Museum. And I've had a conversation with their staff and also with Dugan's son. But it is a huge repository of high quality, culturally significant California Native imagery and information. And it's, to me, a ready-made opportunity to look for funding to hopefully hire some California native, maybe museum studies or photography students. But to catalog that, his repository will take years. And so I just wanted to share that with you, and hopefully the council can consider it. I know that there's a funding need for it too. And my hope is that whenever that funding happens, whenever it's in place, every family and individual who is represented in that repository can get a copy of his work, the imagery. I mean, my own family, I have my mom's in the collection, her image, my brother. But I know that that would probably be very meaningful to so many California Native people who probably, some of the families probably don't even know these images exist. So that's an area. And then also in terms of when we think of creating new curriculum or new publications, there's the imagery right there from probably the early 80s to 2005, 2006. So just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you, and good to see you.
Great to see you too. I'm here in Yurok country today, and of course it's raining.
That's a good thing. I also just saw one of your books up at the Stone Lagoon Visitor Center.
Okay, great. That's a beautiful building. I'm glad you were there. And thank you guys.
Thank you. Other questions, comments at this time? One thing that Chegg mentioned is something that we're looking into as well is as we kind of gear more towards in-person events and there's more gatherings, big times, powwows happening, we are looking to work with a couple of I think we've identified CSUs because we know that they've got some strong Native programs in several of those locations to do some tabling and some outreach. And so to the extent anyone is affiliated with a CSU at this time, that's something that we're looking into as well with our current outreach funding. Anything else I'm missing, Loretta? Okay, I'm gonna keep sharing and I may need your help hold on. Doing this update.
Anna, did you have another question or was that the raised hand from earlier?
No, sorry, forgot to put my hand down.
No, it's okay. Just wanted to make sure we weren't skipping over you.
Sorry, my computer has decided that right now is the time to freeze.
Do you want me to put the PowerPoint up?
I had a comment on the outreach funding. I know you're looking at CSUs, but I really like to recommend tribal and nonprofits. Look into those because I know that trying to get tribal peoples to CSUs is an extreme challenge. Maybe go to the Indian school, like down in Sherman, where the Pomo people go. Look into there before a CSU. That really doesn't capture, in my opinion, many tribal people. So just a comment.
Thank you. And we definitely appreciate the comment. The reason, just so folks understand kind of how we're having to navigate state funding as well. The reason why we're proposing CSU as one piece of the outreach and not definitely the only piece of the outreach is because it's, we can do that very quickly through state intergovernmental agreements, whereas doing kind of the other way would be a little bit more challenging. Though I think that that is definitely something that we can look at from the private funding sources.
Yeah, because your outreach won't be as great. I know it's so easy to work with CSUs. Dollars can go over really quick, but will they really go and talk with tribal people, get tribes engaged? The answer to that is no. you need to really reconsider looking and contacting tribal nonprofits in the state of California. Again, please do that.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Okay. And Robert, we already signed up your CSU. And
I was gonna say
and I think I saw all your dad's CDs.
Oh, good. And it was just the comment from Mr. Barones. I mean, no. I respectfully disagree with him. You know, CSUs were just on the pinnacle of starting more tribal activity. And especially, well, you guys, and I'm down here at San Bernardino, being the California Indian Elders in Residence, and we're starting connection with not only the reservations here towards Martinez, my reservation in particular, but also with the urban educational agencies, San Bernardino City Indian Center, and also Banning Indian Center. So we may be the exception to the rule, but we're starting our own outreach, and we can just dovetail with what you guys want to do and be really easy. And like we said before, we're more than willing to have the council come down here and look at the mid, I guess, central region. But Sherman's also a place that it can start. And again, maybe to their tribal council. But again, we've got more outreach in terms of the reservations. And like I said, in urban city also. But again, we're just starting, we've got Cal Negra coming up, which I sit on the committee that I think we're one of the few Cal states are actually got a Cal Negra program in gear. And I'll find out more when we go down to go up to the NEHC meeting on the 29th. So we're excited to let everybody know that, we're actually getting things done for once. We're actually giving deliverables to everybody down here in the Indian community. But yeah, just, bring it on down. We'll keep you company. We got a brand new student center. Just willing, bring them in. We'll put you guys there. So just a thought again, and I'll give a little more information when the educational subcommittee comes up. So thank you guys.
Awesome, thank you. Juliet.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to make the comment too with the California Tribal College. So, we are just revising and revamping a lot of our programs, and we currently have 64 tribes in the state of California that are membership tribes of our nonprofit. And we just recently held our Southern California quarterly meeting. And so what that means is we invite, not just those tribes in that specific region, but all tribes are able to attend. And we're getting ready to hold our second one in Central, which will be at Shingle Springs. So, we also are available to help out any way that we can with outreach.
Awesome. We love to hear that. And we would love to partner with all of the tribal colleges. And also we're hopeful that you'll all engage in the education task force so that we can get some good recommendations about how to do some sustainable funding and an outreach for those tribal colleges as well. Great. I'm going to go ahead and share again, and we can do updates on the subcommittees. Okay. Can you see that okay?
You can see it.
Okay. So we have several subcommittees and we'll go through them one by one and just kind of give a quick update. So the Academic Partnerships Subcommittee is the subcommittee that is responsible for vetting and approving and recommending partnerships with different academic institutions. And this is definitely going to ramp up as we engage in some of the more issue area task force work. And so what this looks like is either there's institutions that have large collections and would like to be able to help tribes access those collections or even give those collections back. Or there are academic institutions that are situated in an area where they can help tribes build up their own research capacity and best practices for having their own archives and collections, or it's institutions that have holdings of oral histories or other institutions that are hoping to work on the more restitution, reparations oriented work. So, for example, with the governor's announcement of the 100 million that he'd like to see set aside for tribal land issues, there have been institutions that have come forward saying, "Hey, we want to help facilitate this. You know, we're a legal institution. We want to help tribes understand what all of these different land statuses mean and help them kind of get to the place where they can do these transfers or can do these easements or other types of legal mechanisms." Or even create native conservancies, and what is the process for doing that. And so partnerships like that, where it's really standing up those real-time capacity building partnerships for the work that should be, or the recommendations that come out of this council. It can also be academic institutions that want to offer support in terms of research or in terms of having fellows that help kind of facilitate the work of those task forces. And that subcommittee right now is pretty much ready to start vetting those partnerships, and we'll also have kind of a listserv to talk about what are the opportunities for scholarship as well in this space. We also have the funding partnership subcommittee, and that subcommittee works directly with Decolonizing Wealth project to stand up the California Truth and Healing Fund, which is overseen by California Native people. The entire fund is administered, is decided, is created under parameters of that advisory committee, which includes the funding partnership members, but we're in the process of adding 2 more people from the community as well to help process and decide how that fund should go. The Youth Council is the youth component of the Truth and Healing Council, and we're in the process of planning a second virtual convening for youth across the state. We had our first virtual convening in January, where youth were tasked with thinking about how to tell their stories. What was their story in the context of being a Native person? What was their just personal experience of and their connection to their tribes? So we're in the process of planning for a second virtual convening. And the status and identity subcommittee, this is really the subcommittee that's focused on, you know, what are things that, you know, what are issues that people who lack status or identity for whatever reason, whether it is membership criteria, has certain blood quantum qualifications, or uses certain roles that aren't inclusive, whether it's the tribe was terminated at a point in time, whether it's, you know, people lost their membership because of different things that happened within internal tribal politics. What are those people not able to fully utilize within our systems that are designed to be for Native people? You know, for example, certain criteria for getting into California colleges, certain grant programs, certain access to Native plants and practices. What are those things that we should be accounting for and doing better on, because there's so many more barriers? And that group, we have out on social media and on our website a call for facilitators for that discussion. Again, this is one that becomes very complicated and is really difficult to talk about. And we want someone who can come into that space without the potential bringing with them, you know, the status of their tribe or where they're from, and have them be able to help facilitate a discussion that leads to real outcomes and real solutions for a group of people that have been deprived of so much and are also descendants of this awful genocide that the state committed. The education subcommittee works on a number of things having to do with education. So one of them is, how are we telling the story of California Native people in schools? And so that piece of curriculum. And then the second piece is how are our children being served by education systems? And so we're actually thinking of asking to turn this into a task force because it's more issue oriented and is actually starting to already work on some deliverable outcomes, because it's less of a lens and more of a focus area that we would want to have kind of all of the people at the table for that. And then the deliverables subcommittee is that subcommittee I mentioned earlier, where all of the work of the task forces will feed into the deliverables subcommittee based on the recommendation of those task forces to vet and then adopt as a policy or funding or legislative priority. And then the elders subcommittee is the committee of elders that is like the youth council. It's like an elders council. And we have a few nominations to that subcommittee that we'll be talking to the current subcommittee members about that are from throughout the state who have a lot to offer. And if you have other elders that are interested in serving in that subcommittee, discussions are really kind of high level. What do we want to see out of this process? What do we want to make sure we talk about in this process? And also just bringing the full wisdom of our elders who have seen a lot and can help us course correct as needed to this space. Anything else on those, Loretta?
Nope, you covered it.
Cool. Okay. So we're now at the point in this process where we'd like to convene issue area task forces. And we were in between, do we have just one big advisory council that kind of thinks through all of this stuff? Or do we break this up into issue areas that are headed by people who are the experts in their fields? And we kind of landed on the second one because it seems a bit more easy to, not easy, sorry, but there's, people are already doing this work, and if we can have them focus on their focus areas and then bring it back all together, understanding that everything in Indian country is connected, then we can kind of have more of a coherent strategy here. So these are just like very large, not wedded to any sort of language about it, but ideas about what could be areas of examination, with the idea that those subcommittees that I mentioned earlier, like the status and identity, like the elders, like the youth council, would be overlays in all of these spaces because we know that it impacts people differently. So they'd all have different lenses throughout, as well as their own kind of focus area. And each of these is intended to be kind of an overarching examination. And if there are ways to think about this that feel less Western and more Native oriented, we are very much open to that. So we're looking at a large umbrella of culture, which could include language, it could include spiritual practices, it could include access to gathering materials and the like. Financial survivance, we kind of got hung up on this one because we wanted to get away from concepts that are much more like capitalist and commercial oriented and get back to like, what do people need to live and thrive? But really, does that, what are Native communities throughout the state and Native people throughout the state seeing issues with when they are seeking to become self-sufficient and self-determining? And so, whether that's, that you have pockets where there's no Wi-Fi or industry and we need to be able to build that out so that people can engage, or we need to be able to create more opportunities for cultural tourism type incentives, or we need to create better access to financial services for Native people generally. That's kind of what we're looking at in this space. And then even we've heard issues of, people stealing tribal names and registering them with Secretary of State. And then that becomes a whole issue when a tribe wants to go out and do business on behalf of itself. Education is what I mentioned, and it would be inclusive of kind of all of those issue areas. How do we support tribal education systems? How do we, build up education systems? Also, part of this is how do we invest more into institutions that Native people are already using? So Sherman Indian is a great example where thinking about the federal investment there should probably be more. The facilities should probably be better. And what can we do to make those places state-of-the-art places that Native people deserve, and that are Native driven? And same with the tribal colleges. How do we build up those institutions to be places that have everything that they need to be able to adequately serve Native people? I was speaking with a teacher at Sherman, and she teaches foreign language, and the foreign language is Navajo. And so that I think is the only foreign language at this point. And so how do we, we have so many languages in California, how do we integrate that into our education systems? Wellness. This is kind of a capture all for health and wellness. So can be things like disparate outcomes, food deserts, behavioral health, mental health, and culturally informed care. Land and lifeways. This is subject to change. We wanted to think about something that wasn't as, again, capitalist and commercial. And the discussion about land and land back isn't just one of, land with nothing else, but really that the land is the source of lifeways, and that you can't have one without the other. And so we wanted to capture something that sort of means natural resources without using the language of resources, which is inherently commercial, and is really something where we're capturing that worldview that I don't even know if there's like an English word for, but if folks have ideas, would love to hear more about that. And this is really like, how do we get Native people back into the places that they've been since time immemorial in a way that's also healthy? So not putting people on places that are, super fun sites, making sure people are going back to places that they have been from and live from, and that the land remembers them, but that also we're not creating more problems because those places have been neglected by non-natives for so long. And then public safety, and this one we would probably change a bit, but this would include issues of, missing and murdered Indigenous peoples, general wellness, general, transitional housing, things like that. Anything I'm missing, Loretta?
And then also with the public safety, kind of like tribal justice and different, cross-deputization, kind of encompassing all those things. And again, we're not married to these terms. This is where we really want community input for kind of capturing these ideas and categorizing them, which again, we recognize is a very Western way of looking at things, but trying to just get it organized with deliverables in each of these areas, and then having those subcommittees, as Christina mentioned, like as the lens for each of these task forces. And the idea also would be to have those advisors, or to have advisors that are really the experts in these areas. Because again, we did talk about in the previous few listening sessions about kind of a general advisory panel. But here, I think bringing more focus and really having those experts work in those areas where they do have all that knowledge.
Exactly. And with the idea being that those experts would be either California Native or people that are just trusted by California Native people as being the experts in their field. So just putting this out there. And then also if there are other ideas about things that should be covered that don't seem like they would be covered in this space, I'm gonna stop sharing because it goes into listening and discussion anyway.
Again, it's still in the very early stages, like we're just thinking about these things. So definitely really open to everyone's input on this.
Yeah, and then I lost it, sorry.
This is Fred. After hearing your presentation, it kind of, I just draw it to the same question, like where are the California tribes input on this? It really seems to be so far what is happening, the outreach to universities, that's really just sidestepping the tribes in California, which has happened before. And then hiring that decolonization wealth project manager team, that's just, they're from out of state. They'll never understand us. That is another mistake there. So I get, again, I'm getting this feeling that you really haven't asked the tribes what they want. You're kind of just making up their mind for them, putting these bullet points up there that hopefully these mean the best for you, tribe. But I highly recommend that you hire somebody to go and talk to all these tribes in California. Talk to them all. If this program is going to be around truth and healing for a long time, hire someone in your team to go and talk to the tribes and see what the tribes want. I hope that makes sense, because so far it just seems like the tribes are being completely left out by the universities like usual, and then by this outside philanthropy group who's not even California Indian. That's pretty shameful. So please, your approach, it really needs to change. And inclusion is the answer. Inclusion of the California Indian. So please reach out to the tribes, ask what they want. Don't make their minds up for them. There's several tribal people here who have nonprofit organizations and would love to receive funding to make their tribal programs go. So many that I highly encourage you to meet. They're people too. They've been here for 10,000 years. They could tell you some of the most beautiful stories, like the Pomo people. For your history, we will tell you that our people, Pomo, we used to sail across to Hawaii on boats. There is a petroglyph in Hawaii on the island of Lanai of our big head roundhouse dancer. We had our own religion even before Christianity came. So we'd love to just have this more inclusive talks, but really with California Indian people, tribes, and tribal nonprofits. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. We really appreciate that. But I do want to just mention that we have been having ongoing discussions with California tribes, all California tribes for the past several years, and this is all consultation informed. So this isn't something where we've just decided that something needs to happen and we're making those calls. Typically what happens with these updates and how we kind of pose these ideas to the community is that we have been engaging in consultation discussions on one-on-one basis with different tribes. We're going out to community, we're listening, we're trying to understand what the needs are, and we're trying to reflect that back. And if there are ideas about how we could do it differently or better, that's what we hope to hear. And with the Decolonizing Wealth Project, I just want to say that they're really here only for administering a program that is going to be directed by California Native people. That California tribal nonprofits are eligible as grantees. And so to the extent that there are California tribal organizations that would like to be able to help facilitate this process and help tribal people engage in the process, they would be eligible for this. And those decisions are not being made by Decolonizing Wealth Project. They're being made by a panel of California Native people. And so I just, I do want to urge that while we do really appreciate this input, we are continually talking to different tribes, different communities, different organizations. And we really encourage you, if you feel like it's less than representative, to continue to bring more California Native peoples into these discussions as well. Ken?
Hello?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. I was really interested on that money you're talking about, buying some of our homeland back. Is there a bill, or is this, how is this working? Because I have no information on, buyback the program. Is that the 30-30, 20-30?
30-30. So
30-30.
it's not fully baked. And so if you think it's a good idea, we encourage you to let the legislature know that it's a good idea without saying but like it is, if you like it, then I think it's good to tell people that you like the idea. This is a proposal to set aside 100 million of the 30x30 funds for purposes related to tribal-led land initiatives. So what that means is kind of an open question and will be developed in consultation with California tribes, so federally and non-federally alike. And while I think the coverage of it is focusing on land buyback, that's not the exclusive use that it could be used for. For example, it could be used for land transfers to native conservation, native conservatorships. It could be used for kind of everything, really. It doesn't need to be a transfer. It can be used for easements. It can be used for different types of things. And it would be available for both federally and non-federally recognized tribes alike.
Great. Yeah, that's where I was concerned, because we don't have a land, pretty much a lot of unrecognized tribes don't. Ours is owned by the federal government. We do have some allotment lands, but what we got is not even commercially feasible to use as grazing land. That's the thing right there. I'm looking at over 200,000 acres. I'm dealing with the BLM, co-signing with them to work within our tribal areas. So would that money be available for the BLM?
I think it would be available for anything. So, okay, so let me back up. So the state also has, like, the governor issued an administration policy to encourage transfer of lands as well. So that's something that's already something that the state is trying to do with different tribes. This would be for anything that might be outside of that. So let's say potentially a tribe identified a parcel that, because BLM needed fair market value based on their statutes, that they needed to spend $200,000 on. That could be something potentially that would be covered by this set aside.
But what about California excess lands? Because that's what I'm doing right now. I'm looking at California excess lands.
If you see California excess lands that you think are a good fit for transfer, let me know and we can start talking about that.
Great, thank you, because I'm sitting on them right now. Anyway, thank you very much. I'll be talking to you soon. Thank you.
Great.
And Michael did put in the chat the press release for that. And right now it is, governor's proposal. So if you just want to take a look at that too, it has a little bit more information.
Thank you.
Vice Chair.
Hi, thanks again. I have a comment and then a question. My comment about the term resources. So when we think about our environment, the land, water, and the sky as resources, and we're trying to get away from that term, although that is a correct, more modern term. When we go out to these places and honor what the Creator has provided for us, and when we honor that, we do that with an offering or a prayer, because these are gifts that the Creator has bestowed upon us so that we can have homes and we can have food and we can have medicines. The land, the sky, and the water are teachers. And, in the old days, these would be our grocery stores and our doctors. And like I said, our educators. So I like to refer to these as gifts provided to us by the Creator rather than resources. And so that was my comment about that. And my question is, under those subcommittees, which one would cover exploiting Native Americans like the sports teams do? How they have the Redskins and the Chiefs, that kind of exploitation. And then also using or having non-native people making beadwork or basketry or blankets or regalia. I know there are a lot of non-native people that know how to do these things, but I know that there's a lot of places that don't allow them to sell at their events or gatherings. And I was just wondering which subcommittee would cover that kind of exploitation. Thank you.
Thank you. I think globally, thank you for all of the comments. That's really, really good. And I don't know that any of them would cover it. So we're writing notes and thinking about how that might fit. But I think the cultural exploitation is something that for sure needs to be in there. And maybe that is under culture but I almost think you need to call it out in a truth and healing document as something what it is. Because I also think that there's a tie-in to human exploitation that happened at the beginning of the state too, with, the slavery, the trafficking, all of that. And that there's modern day exploitation of the images and the culture and and even like the cultural intellectual property that we're seeing too. So maybe we will pull that out as a separate task force, or as at least a focus.
I think this is a great example of how everything is really interconnected, because we can look at this from a wellness perspective, the mental health aspect of having, the sports teams and what that does to the youth and Native people. And also with the non-natives with regalia making could go under like the financial survivance category. So it really is an example of how this is all really interconnected, but it does make sense. We could pull that out too.
Well, and we were also thinking about, one of our council members was talking about how she has tribal members who are unable to sell under the Indian Arts and Crafts Act because of the status issues. But then also you've got people selling, Navajo, like rugs, what they'll call them, that out of Urban Outfitters. And it's definitely not, a Navajo type of thing. So even that idea that like non-native people are profiting from exploitation and native people aren't even able to access those markets, I think it's interesting. So we'll incorporate that into some space. What I'd really like is for part of the outcome document to be like a virtual tour. And then that way you can even see how these are all part of the same system. And so, that wellness is not different from education, and is not different from safety, and is not different from culture. But we'll have to find someone who's good at that, Loretta. Other comments, questions, concerns? We have about 2 minutes.
Hi, I do have a question. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Janelle. I'm coming to you guys from Shawnee Territory in Texas. I just wanted to know, since the last time I was able to jump on one of these calls, there had been exactly 0 oral histories recorded. Has that changed since then?
No.
Why is that?
We haven't had any tribes ask for oral histories to be recorded at this time.
Oh, okay. So I would like to agree with what Fred was saying earlier, that I think the council needs to make a concerted effort to be reaching out to the tribes and the nonprofits to make that happen, because I don't think a lot of people even know about the California Truth and Healing Council. So I'd just like to put that out there.
Thank you. Pamela?
Hi, Manata. Thank you for all the staff who are doing this and all the council members. I just had a couple of clarifying questions. If there was a process document where we could learn more about what this process entails. And I know it's first time ever, so I get that. But I think my expectation is that this could be as powerful as, or even more powerful than the American Indian Policy Review Commission from the 70s that gave us the Indian Child Welfare Act. You know, that we could like dream so big on actual systems change here in California. And so I'm a bit nervous about the task force and the subcommittees being really field driven versus systems driven. Like I would like to have bigger, higher level policy discussions and how tribes can say that we want systems change or completely reject current systems and want systems built upon Indigenous knowledges. And so I think a process document would really help maybe all of us to collectively navigate how we get to the point of having some type of final outcome document that has real world recommendations that could positively impact our tribal communities.
Thank you. Really love that suggestion. And maybe we can follow up on a side meeting as well to hear a bit more about what you're thinking. Anna?
Yes, just a couple of things. One, I want to say that with the maybe it would be the youth council, or maybe something separate with the arts, but there is so much going on connecting Indigenous craftspeople and artists, and from fashion design, it's really powerful on the internet. And I think like part of the healing would be to help young people and others who are, like you said, not able to sell their wares, you know, because of these rules, but just connect with each other, and support each other, because it really is a healing thing for people like my son, who's not he's not able to register in his Lakota tribe, but he just really enjoys that connection. That's one. And then I have a question about I know that this is a major effort. It's very moving. It's really powerful. And it doesn't need to necessarily connect with other people's struggles. But I have noticed that in the state legislature, there is a caucus about reparations for slavery. And to me, it's a huge disconnect to not acknowledge California Indian slavery for this group. And I'm not saying that they should necessarily take it on. It's not for me to say, but I feel that the idea that you're going to talk about reparations for slavery from the California government, and you're not going to talk about reparations for California Indian slavery is quite insane, really. And I wondered if there's, at any level, if you've heard any effort to have any intersectionality about this. It's just really a question. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I appreciate the question, and I'll end the comment from earlier. And I think it also raises that we know that there are existing networks that may just need a little bit of a lift. And so to the extent that there are Native networks of people, of artisans, artists who exist and may just need additional funding or additional visibility, we'd like to hear about that too, because we're not here to displace any efforts that just need a little bit of help. The second piece is we have asked a lot of questions about that reparations council or committee, and by statute, its focus area is for African-American descendants. And so it's very much limited in its scope, which to me doesn't mean that you can't and do not have those discussions. And it is, to me, also a major oversight given the history just generally in the United States of how all of that even came about. But would be interested to hear about thoughts about how to engage in that space, and whether we should be proactively reaching out to that group to just make sure that they have someone come and testify to the issues of Native peoples, just so that they aren't being leapfrogged or just not even understood. Okay. We are a bit over time. If anyone has additional follow-up, we will be around again tomorrow at 6 p.m. And remember, no Wednesday this month, but that's just for this month. It's tomorrow night at 6 p.m. And then you can also always email info@catruthandhealing.com with any follow-up questions and concerns. And I do want to mention that sometimes it'll feel like some of these processes are taking a bit longer than they need to. Part of that is that we don't want to get ahead of the council, the governing council itself. So sometimes we'll have situations, for example, like the process for getting on subcommittees and task forces where we want to vet it with the council and make sure that they're okay with how we're moving forward and that reflects the way that they want to be engaged. So just want to make sure that we are doing that with respect to their level of engagement. So very much appreciate all of your time and happy to see all of you and hope to continue to have productive discussions as we move forward. So thank you all and take care.